Welcome to the Invite Health podcast, where our degreed healthcare professionals are excited to offer you the most important health and wellness information you need to make informed choices about your health. You can learn more about the products discussed in each of these episodes and all that Invite Health has to offer at www.invitehealth.com/podcast. First-time customers can use promo code podcast at checkout for an additional 15% off your first purchase. Let's get started.
One of the most underestimated factors in our overall wellness is sleep. And we know that sleep is vital to the entire body. We understand that we need to get a restful night's sleep in order to function properly. But why is that? And what can you do to help to enhance your circadian rhythms and really support a restful night's sleep, and why that matters so much? That's what I want to talk about today. What foods you can be incorporating into your evening routine before going to sleep. What nutrients would be advantageous to include in for a restful night's sleep. And the real ramification if we are not getting adequate sleep. And for many people, they go out throughout their entire life and they just kind of accept it as being normal, that maybe they only sleep for 4-5 hours at a time. And perhaps you work a night shift, and so your biological clock is completely out of sorts. So I want to talk about some of the science behind that, some of the statistics, as well as foods and nutrients that can be beneficial. I am Amanda Williams, MD, MPH, and let's get right to it. Let's talk about the circadian rhythm. And we know that the circadian rhythms are controlled by a biological clock located within the brain. And one of those key functions is to ramp up the production of melatonin. Now, if we are lacking melatonin, that can affect many different aspects of our health, not just the sleep cycle, but also our immune system as well. So for many people, they have turned to melatonin consistently to help to promote a restful night's sleep. And that certainly is a good idea when your sleep patterns are disturbed. Now, we know that there's different stages of sleep, and not all sleep is technically the same. So we have our non-REM sleep, and then we have our REM sleep, which is rapid eye movement. And this is very important because we have different brain waves and different levels of wakefulness as well as activity that is actually occurring. Now, all of these things must kind of work together so that the body has time to really repair from all of the different stressors that we put it through each and every single day. And we know that sleep is incredibly vital to brain plasticity. And so when we think about neuroplasticity or brain plasticity, that's the ability for the little brain cells to basically repair and recover themselves. And if we are not getting adequate sleep, then this certainly can lead to issues. I mean, certainly people can feel sluggish or depressed, but we certainly also know that there are factors such as high blood pressure that have been linked with the poor sleep quality. So there's a lot of different ways in which our sleep can affect our metabolism, our cardiovascular system, certainly our mental clarity, and we have to make sure that we are doing everything that we can in our power to get adequate sleep. Now, when we look at the statistics, it's really quite overwhelming, and we know that there's roughly about 70 million Americans who have some form of a sleep disorder. Now, there's also reports or statistics that's roughly about 50% of those people who have a sleep disorder report snoring as being one of the main components to the sleep disruption. Not usually if someone's snoring, they usually don't know, but sometimes the body will wake itself up because it throws it out of those normal sleep cycles that it's trying to go through. So the non-REM and the REM. Now, when we also look a little bit deeper into it, we can find that people who are not getting restful night sleeps oftentimes will fall asleep during the day. And that's roughly 40% of people who have a sleep disorder will report that yeah, I just kind of, nodded off during the day. Maybe they're at work. And even more dangerously is if someone falls asleep while driving. And we know that drowsiness or falling asleep at the wheel certainly is responsible for multiple fatalities annually every single year in the United States. So we know that insomnia, sleep apnea, these are all major problems. And when it comes to disrupted sleep, I always encourage people that if you experience problems in your sleep, that it would be wise to go in and have a medically evaluated sleep study done at a sleep center where they can actually see what is happening through those different stages of sleep. And, if it happens to be an issue where it's sleep apnea, where there are episodes or periods throughout the night where you actually stop breathing, then many times you have to, adhere to, say, a CPAP treatment where you're getting this continual pressure of air going in to make sure that that doesn't happen. We know that melatonin is oftentimes a common thing that people will look at. But when it comes to how much sleep you actually need, for adults, we know it's roughly 7 to 9 hours of sleep. So 7 to 9 hours. And the average American is certainly not achieving that 7 to 9 hours. So what can we be doing to really make sure that our diet includes foods that have really healthy nutrients that can help to promote a healthy circadian rhythm and support those biological processes and that repairing process that has to occur overnight? So we want to look towards foods that have naturally occurring melatonin in that. So we can look at certain foods such as cherries. We know that cherries have a really good amount of naturally occurring melatonin. Now, the cherries that have the higher amount of melatonin happen to be the Montmorency, the tart cherries. So for many people, they maybe will have, a 4-ounce glass of tart cherry extract or a tart cherry juice in the evening before bed, because this is a natural way for the body to promote natural melatonin into the system. So we certainly know that that can be very beneficial, but we can also look at other things like kiwi, for example. Now, if you are a fan of kiwi fruit, this is a really wonderful, I kind of look at it as like a superfood in its own right, because it's packed with vitamins and minerals, and it contains these really lovely amounts that can help to promote sleep. So thinking about things that you can be doing in the evening before bed, we can have some tart cherry juice. Now, we can also look towards incorporating maybe kiwi fruit into our routine. But we can also look towards foods that have tryptophan in it. Why is that important? Because we know that tryptophan is this very important essential amino acid, and it is needed for a variety of different things that are occurring in the body. But we know that it's very important when it comes to the neurotransmitter production of serotonin, and then from there we get melatonin. So within that pathway, the biological pathway in the body, we have tryptophan, then we have serotonin, then we have melatonin. So by having foods that are higher in tryptophan, this may help to promote that natural process between those different neurotransmitters and then hence into melatonin hormone. So these are things that you may want to start to incorporate. And, there's always the story about Thanksgiving and, I had too much turkey and now I feel sleepy. Well, is there any degree of truth to that? Of course there is. However, it's usually that you overate to the point that we're having a blood sugar issue is more likely the issue going on there. But when we look at foods that are high in tryptophan, we can look towards things like chicken and turkey. Certainly we can look at things such as seeds and nuts and eggs. So if someone is adhering to a Mediterranean diet, it's not really too difficult to obtain a good amount of tryptophan-rich foods, which is really quite beneficial. So when we think about the way that we eat every single day, and if we have that stricter adherence to a Mediterranean diet, or we're getting the fruits and vegetables, but we're also having a good amount of nuts and seeds, then we are helping the body with the proper pathways that is required to regulate that circadian rhythm. Now, many times what happens is if the body is under a lot of stress, maybe you have emotional stress, maybe there's physical stress, then sometimes the brain has a hard time wanting to simmer down at night and just quiet itself, which makes it difficult to fall asleep. So in those types of settings, it's always advantageous to consider things such as 5-HTP, for example, which is 5-hydroxytryptophan. And 5-HTP is a supplement that you actually take. So we talk about the intermediate steps. So we have tryptophan that we can derive from food. Then we have 5-HTP, which then converts to serotonin. So if someone is having a hard time getting that brain to just kind of unwind at night, having 5-HTP on board before bed, very, very beneficial for many people. Now, how much should you be taking? Because 5-HTP can be utilized for a lot of different reasons to support, mood. Say, for example, you have a tendency to have a lower mood. Maybe it's because you're not getting adequate sleep. Then we can look at 5-HTP at lower amounts, maybe 50 to 100 milligrams once or twice a day. But when we are utilizing 5-HTP for the promotion of kind of calming the brain and getting that restful night's sleep, then I usually would look at like 150 to 200 milligrams. Now, this is something that you can kind of, play around with to see what is the right amount. And whenever you're doing that, it's always best to start low and slow. So maybe start with 150, see how you do with that after a few days. If that doesn't, kind of clear everything, then you'd want to go to maybe 200 milligrams. But we do know that 5-HTP can be very beneficial. The other thing that many people overlook that plays a really critical role in kind of the relaxation of everything in the body is magnesium. And what we know about magnesium is that a good 50% of Americans are low in magnesium. So when we look at magnesium deficiencies, that can be a problem. So if the vasculature and the skeletal muscles have a hard time just in that proper relaxation and following that circadian rhythm, then this can also be a reason as to why one is not getting adequate sleep throughout the night. So having magnesium on board in the evening many times can be very, very beneficial. So if we find ourselves falling into this trap of not getting adequate 7 to 9 hours of sleep, first and foremost, we want to make sure that there is not an underlying medical reason as to why this is happening. Is it sleep apnea? Is there a real significant issue going on with an insomnia brought on by an underlying medical condition? So you definitely want to check with your physician and rule out those things. If it comes down to the brain just has a hard time unwinding because of the stress of your day or for any other reason, then we want to be looking at things such as magnesium, 5-HTP, incorporating those in maybe a half hour before you would ideally like to go to sleep. Now, say we just have disrupted sleep from time to time. And say most time, I feel like I sleep pretty good, but there are times where I'm not getting, really good solid sleep. Then we should look at the diet and say, okay, are we getting enough of these nutrients every single day? Maybe I do need to adhere to a Mediterranean diet where I'm getting foods that are high in tryptophan. Remember the eggs and the nuts and the seeds and chicken and turkey. And these can be very, very balancing to the body. But also remember, we have the option of looking at things like tart cherries. So there's a lot of different ways that we can incorporate things that can promote restful night sleep into our actual diet. And remember the kiwi fruit. That's another way. Now, like I said, if you're not a fan of kiwi, that's okay, because there are other options that you can certainly look towards. We know that, the nuts, like the almonds and the walnuts, these are a really wonderful source of not only that tryptophan, but they also contain melatonin and magnesium and zinc. So for that all of the essential functions within the body that do help to promote sleep. Even having some nuts at night before bed, maybe 20 walnuts along with, 4 ounces of tart cherry juice. These are ways that you can certainly help to get your body back into that normal circadian rhythm, because what we do know is that when we are not getting restful night sleep, we have a lot of things that can start to go awry. Sleep is very important to our existence. And, study after study have shown that diet plays a really huge role into this. And the Mediterranean diet in particular has been studied and associated with the promotion of better sleep. So this is why I'm always talking about the Mediterranean diet, because across the board, it doesn't matter if we're looking at brain health, heart health, sleep health, bone health, look at metabolic health. The Mediterranean diet, time and time again, is just so incredibly nourishing to the human body. So think about those different things. There's other things too to keep in mind when it comes to getting good night's sleep, such as limiting your caffeine intake, your alcohol intake, trying not to eat a heavy meal real late, before you're going to go to bed. Certainly people who are affected with GI issues, having things like probiotics and digestive enzymes on board sometimes can really make a huge difference when it comes to the regulation of sleep. But we also know that, sleep hygiene comes into play too. So, having the proper temperature in your bedroom, along with making sure that we don't have our electronic devices on and we don't have the television on and all of those things that emit that blue light, that certainly can disrupt the normal pathways in which the brain has to go through, the body has to go through in order to get a full restful night's sleep. So keep all of these things in mind. Certainly you can turn towards things like melatonin, which of course people always want to know, how much should I take? And I always say with melatonin, you should know because of the way that your body responds to it. So I always say with melatonin, always best low and slow. And, maybe you start with 3 milligrams and you may find that that is the really good amount for you. If you wake up in the morning and you feel real groggy, then you know that that was too much. If you wake up and you feel like I didn't get a restful night's sleep, then maybe you want to increase that. So that's just kind of the way that you would utilize melatonin. Same thing with magnesium. Oftentimes the question is, well, how much magnesium should I be taking? And that really depends on your bowel tolerance to the to the magnesium. So with that, you want to make sure that, maybe start with 200 milligrams in the evening. You may bump that up to 400. So you kind of, once again, play around with the amounts that you are taking with those. But certainly whenever you are unsure as to how much you should be taking or which nutrient you should be taking, definitely reach out to one of our nutritional experts at any of our locations, or you can email us, or you can call any of the stores to, ask for the specific health concerns that you have, so you can have a very individual guided approach to whatever concern you may be dealing with. So that is all that I have for you for today. I want to thank you so much for tuning into the Invite Health podcast. Remember, you can find all of our episodes for free wherever you listen to podcasts, or by visiting invitehealth.com/podcast. Now, do make sure that you subscribe and you leave us a review. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Invite Health, and we will see you next time for another episode of the Invite Health podcast.